This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just do a video for you so that if you don't understand anything now, you can always watch the video again and just to go over everything that we're going to do now for a second time and pause if you need to. So in the SATs, you're going to get functions. So you're going to have to know what these are. Now, the straight line function is the most basic function. And so if you have a graph like this, you have your y-axis here, which is the one that goes vertically, and then you have your horizontal axis. Good. Okay, so those are your two axes, and then you could have a function that would have a straight line. So this notation is often, they'll say y equals ax plus c. Now what this is the basic form of a function. And so, for example, you could see something like y equals 2x plus c. 2x plus, I'm on load shedding, but I'm using a Wi-Fi hotspot, so it should be okay. I mean, let's make that 3. Okay, so I think the easiest bit to understand is actually the C bit, the 3. So do you know what the 3 tells us?
No.
Okay, so this tells you your y-intercept. So it basically tells you the part of the y-axis where the graph intercepts. So over here, the y-intercept is 0 because this y-axis goes from positive over here. So this could be then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then down, right? -1, -2, -3, -4, etc. So in the middle is 0, and then on the x it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 that way, like a number line, -1, -2, -3, -4. So this would be this function here. Your c is actually not there because it goes through the 0. So this function could be something like y equals, say, now this goes up. So if this point here is 2 and 2, that means that the slope is 1 because as it goes across by 2, it also goes up by 2. So this would be a standard graph, which is basically y equals x. Meaning that we see what y is 2, but if we go across, x is also 2. So this is like your most basic straight line function. But then what you could do is you could move it up, right? So you could move it up like that. Okay, I haven't done that well because this should really go through, it should really go through 2 and 2. So
yeah, it does.
So that should be 2. That should be -2 over there. Come over there. So this graph, because I've shifted it up by 2, this intercept here becomes +2. So this would be a 2. So let me make it the 3, which I put it there. So that would mean it would go up to here, 3 there.
Yeah.
And so this would be y equals x now +3. And if there's, does that make sense? So it sounded like you had a light bulb moment there. Cool. So, so this would be, we won't go too much detail, but this, because it's y equals x, the amount that the graph goes up in terms of y, the x would be the same. So what we notice is, let's look at a point on the graph here, over here, right? So this would be, the y is 5, and then the x value is 2. So that means it starts at 3, and then it goes up by 1. So every time x goes up by 1, the y goes up by 1. So where it starts at 3 and 0, then it goes up to 1, and then
And it goes up
to 4, yeah. And then when it goes to 2, it goes up another 1 to 5.
to
So what they do in the SATs is they ask you to interpret graphs like this by saying something like a salesperson earns a 300 Rand basic. Or it won't be 300 Rand. It'll be $300. $3,000 basic and $200 for every unit he sells, something like it. So we could make it let's make it, it's a printer salesman. Printer he sells, because I used to sell printers at Boston. And so this could be represented on a graph by the following. So I'm going to do it small, but what happens is if this was along the x-axis was the number of printers he sells, it wouldn't start at negative. It would, because he can't sell 0 printers, so it would be something like this. But then our C would be where he starts. So like say, so we would be looking on our x-axis for 300. Oh, sorry, 3,000.
I'm sorry. I didn't get that.
Sorry? Sorry, what is that? Are you still there?
This meeting is being recorded.
So the earnings, so if he sells 0 printers, he still gets $3,000 basic. But then if he sells 1 printer, then he would make 3,200. And so you would see then this value here would be then 3,200 over here. And then at 1, sorry, then if you sold 2 printers, it would be
3,400.
That's right, yeah. And so exactly, so then that is how it sort of gets represented on a graph. So we would then be able to interpret it. So that's a straight line graph. So what you're looking for is when they say what is the starting point of the question. So in other words, if he was starting a journey and he didn't start at 0 and the height was say like 60, you're looking for the y-intercept to be 60. So the y-intercept is like your starting point. So that's how we interpret the graph. And then the steepness is how much it goes up by something that changes. So we know his basic does not change. What is changing is the number of printers he sells each month, which would then determine how much extra money he would make. Okay, so that's straight line graph. So we'll look at some examples on the Khan Academy practice of that. So that's fairly important. And then even if you have a parabola, like a different shaped graph, you still can use this idea of looking at the intercept as your starting point. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing that we see in the SATs, which is different from South Africa, is this idea of functions inside a function. What does that mean? So when you look at this y, sometimes this gets called f of x. Now, f of x just means y, or it could be c of x or whatever. So this is simply just means y. Now, the reason they do that is because say I had another function. I'll just draw it in pink like that. Well, if I say that that's y equals, I don't know, negative x plus 2. I need to distinguish between the pink one and the red one by what it's called. So all they do is instead of calling it y, they could call this one g of x. And then the red one, they call it f of x. Yeah. So that's what
basically just the name of the straight line or the parable.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it means that we can have more than one. And so you're going to see something like this. So let's say we have f of x equals 3x plus 2. And g of x equals 2x minus 1. I'm going to start by saying, what if they ask you what f of 3 is? What that means is that we know that f of x is 3x plus 2. So f of 3 means everywhere we see an x, we put a 3 in.
Okay.
So I have a 3 as usual, but I don't put an x because now x is now 3. So where I see that x, I put a 3 plus 2.
Oh, okay.
And so now I have a 3 times 3 is 9 plus 2 is 11. So f of 3 is 11. So basically, f of 3, whatever x is, put a 3 in. So 3 times 3 is 9 plus 2. Okay, so that's the first thing about the notation. And so we could say, well, what is f of, they could even have what is f of a half. It doesn't mean that it's any more complicated. It just means, okay, instead of x, I'm going to put a half. And so it's just a simple.
It's going to be 3 times half, which is 1,5 plus
Yes.
2, which is 3,5.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay, so you've got that. So now this is, South Africans battle with this because it's something new. They will ask us something like, what is f of, and they'll write it either like this, f of g of x, or they'll write it f g of x. This means the same thing. So sometimes, they'll ask it like that. So where you see f g of x and f of g of x, this is the same thing. What it means is, notice that we subbing in we subbed in a 3 where we see an x. Where we see this,
An x, yeah.
Yeah, where we see this f of g of x, what that means is sub in this g of x wherever we see an x. So wherever we see a x in our function over here, we put a g of x. That's why the colors are so important. So now,
Can you please repeat that? You're actually buffering. I didn't hear that.
okay. So the f of g of x means instead of replacing the x with a 3 or a half, we're actually replacing it.
Hello?
We're actually replacing it. Shall I say that again one more time? I'm still buffering.
Okay. I didn't. Now you're back. You were gone for a while.
Okay, perfect. So where you see f of g of x, it means instead of subbing in a 3 or a half like we did before, we're actually subbing in a whole other equation into it. So that's a bit confusing and it takes a while to get used to. But we have an f. Let's just rewrite this again, just so it's over here where we can see it. F of x equals 3x plus 2. So this was our f of x. Now what they're saying is, what is f of g of x? Right. So if they were to ask what is f of g of x, well, instead of putting subbing in an x like a 3 or a number there, f of
Mhm.
f of g of x, let me write it in color so we can see. F of g of x means instead of putting an x where there's instead of putting like over here, I put a 3 or a half. Here, I'm actually putting a whole other function there. So in other words, I'll write it as x, y equals 3. But now where I see an x, I replace that x with a 2x plus 1.
Oh,
Sorry, minus 1.
okay. Minus
Okay.
1.
Now this takes a lot of getting used to. Even for guys who've done pure maths, it's just a weird way of thinking. So what I've done is I've replaced the x with a 2x minus 1. And maybe having not done a lot of the functions before might actually help you, who knows, because you're so used to a way of thinking that this may actually make perfect sense. But what I do is then times in the 3 times 2x. So 3 times 2 is 6x.
Times the 3 by everything in the bracket.
That's right. So 3 times minus 1 minus 3 plus 2. And so then I get 6x. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1.
Is 1.
So f of g of x is
equal to x negative 1.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it is quite tricky because it's, have you watched that movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio where it's like dreams within a dream?
Mm-hmm.
This is like a function within a function within a function, and they can actually go quite deep. So they could even ask, like, this may get super confusing, but they could even ask, what is f of g of 3? Like this. They could say, well, what's this? Oh no, what's happened? F3. And so with a question like this, you work from the inside out. So you go, well, first of all, what is g of 3? So g of 3 is this function here, but instead of an x, I put a 3 in there.
Okay.
And so I have 2 times 3 minus 1 that's 8 minus 1 is 7. So I've actually, technically, I must just put 7 in there. So what that actually means is, what is f of 7?
So basically, that's the second one we were looking at. The f of g of 3 is a shorter version of f of g of x.
Yes. Because instead of putting the 2x minus 1 here, we're actually putting the 7 that we did when we subbed in 3. So it's like, go from the inside out. So that's why I said it's like Inception, because it's a dream within a dream within a dream. So like a function inside a function, and then hopefully they won't do any more than this. But so here now we place that x with a 7 plus 2. So do you see I've used this one here, 3x plus 2.
Yeah.
But I'm putting now 7 there. So this just takes, it's just a different way of thinking, and you'll see it quite a lot in the SATs, and it takes a bit of getting used to. Okay, so those are the main kind of function tips that I start with, because you know it's all about, with the SATs, you know, how many marks can you kind of accumulate as you go. And so when you do the practice on Khan Academy, you'll see that you start to see these. And so it's like, okay, well, I can tick off those. And then some of the marks you're going to just accumulate are just going to be common sense. And you may have seen that when you did the practice. But I think that's fine for functions for now. I'm going to stop it there, and then we'll do some actual questions.